Hello and welcome to a special edition of the Sports Gazette podcast on the coronavirus. I'm Alex Bartlett, your host, and I'm very lucky to be joined by the host of our writers from all over the world. First of all, we're going to hand over to Flavia Festa in Naples, Italy.
Hello, everyone.
And then Maitane Alana in Bilbao.
Hello.
Hello, Maitane. And then Olga Bagatini, a co-editor in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
Hello, Alex. Hello, everyone.
Hello. Muireann Duffy in Kilfenora, Ireland.
Hi, guys. Hey.
And our resident Canadian Becky Thompson, who's here in England with me in Hartley, Whitney.
Hello, everyone.
It's great to have you all here. And first of all, I hope all your families are doing well in what is very challenging times at the moment. And that goes out to all of our listeners as well. That's a real big message. There's obviously the challenges we're facing at the moment. Bit uncharted territory for us all. We obviously are here to talk about sports, being the Sports Gazette, but obviously this crisis is much bigger than sports. So we'll get onto that in a bit. But first of all, I wanted to get sort of an idea of what's going on for you guys in each of your countries and what it's been like for you since you guys have returned home. And Becky, obviously for you living away from home at the moment in these challenging times. So I think no better place to start than Flavia in Italy, which has obviously sort of become the heart of the epicenter, which has been here in Europe. Over 80,000 cases and as we stand over 8,000 deaths. So Flavia, just for you, what's it been like for you since you returned home about 2 weeks ago, I think?
Well, it's a challenging time right now. As everyone knows, Italy has been like the first country to be hit by this like emergency outside China. The numbers are like really scary and dramatic, especially in the north of the country. In the south, everything was closed really fast. And way before the emergency became like not manageable anymore in the south. So where I am right now is not as bad, but in the north it's very sad. It seems like a war for many people. It's really challenging for doctors, for anyone that is like helping, like frontline people that like helping everyone.
There's obviously very much a tale of sort of two regions in Italy. Which is also very much how it works for you guys as a country, and obviously we're starting to see it flatten. Do you think we've seen the worst of it?
I don't think we've seen the worst of it yet. We had 4 days in a row in which the numbers were going a little bit down, which is promising. But I'm pretty sure the quarantine time that right now is until April 3rd will probably be expanded until April 20 or 25th, something like that.
And for you personally, how have you found it?
It was really weird coming back to an empty city. The train station was literally probably 20 people in there. Never seen it so empty. Everyone wearing gloves, face masks. It is weird. I'm right now in isolation for 5 more days. So it's weird also not like being far from your family, even though you're in the same household. Not be able to like hug them or kiss them. But just we have to keep doing that, so we're going to be out of this emergency the sooner.
Yeah, exactly, and that's very much the message that I know the WHO are pushing as well. It really is much of a togetherness, and I just sort of wondered. I'd hand over to Maitane in Bilbao, which is obviously Spain is seeing its worst of the virus at the moment. Deaths on the rise. Obviously, you're up over 4,000 deaths now, Maitane, and how have you seen it develop? Because obviously you've been there for sort of since it was starting to get bad, but it's grown and grown. So how, rather than Flavia coming back to what was almost a ghost town in Italy, you've obviously seen a different situation and it really developed. What have you found it like?
Well, we're now in week 2. I've been at home for a week. And the same as Flavia, I got here and saw nobody in the streets. The state of alarm has been postponed, extended until April the 12th. They say we're reaching a peak, but I'm not that sure. And here in Spain, people are not taking the quarantine very seriously. You can still see people, jobs. The government said jobs should give people ease them in, make it easier for them to be at home and and work. So work from home, but you can still see lots of cars, which is not ideal. And the police are finding people that haven't got a reason to be out. So that's important.
Yeah, and what have you thought of the way the government have dealt with the situation in Spain?
Well, I think Spain should have started the quarantine much earlier. I think this state of alarm was just set 2 weeks ago, and the deaths and cases increased. Like this past week, the cases have increased a lot, because all the people that weren't in quarantine have now got the symptoms. So I think, yeah, they should have set this date much earlier.
I think that's very much a message from country to country, and I think a lot of you guys, having been over here, will have seen that we sort of probably didn't act quick enough as well. And I think I'd be very surprised if England didn't and Britain didn't descend into a similar situation as Italy and Spain in the next coming weeks. And I know they're predicting it. So that's very much a thing. And Muireann, obviously, Ireland actually, despite having a lot less cases than we had over here, shut down before us about a week before us in the end, wasn't it?
We haven't gone into lockdown like the UK has, but I've been home 2 weeks now. So I came home Friday 2 weeks ago, and literally when I landed in Shannon, the atmosphere is just completely different. So my parents have been on the phone to me, like going mad before I came home, and I just had no idea what was going on. Like the UK was in a completely different world compared to what was going on here. So once I landed home, I knew that they were taking it so much more seriously. Yeah. But so we were very early to close the pubs, close like kind of non-essential businesses and things like that. But we haven't gone into full lockdown yet. So we were kind of quick off the blocks, but it's now gotten to the stage where we're kind of lagging behind.
And in terms of do you think that people want the full lockdown now? I know you mentioned you're not quite there.
Like, I don't know, we currently have a caretaker government because they haven't formed the government since the last election. So Leo Varadkar is still in power, and he just keeps saying that we police by consensus. So that's kind of another way of saying that we don't do what we're told. So if they put us into lockdown, they're afraid that we won't do it, we won't adhere to the guidelines. So I think they're trying to keep this kind of let us do it all together. They're trying to make us want to do the social distancing and self-isolation instead of making us do it.
How is the dynamic between the parties in this situation?
So it's really strange now at the moment. So Sinn Féin, who've never been in government like as a majority holder since the foundation of the state, really, they did really well in the last election, but they still didn't have enough to take a majority. So now what we have is Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, who traditionally would have been each other's opposition, and they are now in talks to form a government. So it's really interesting times now.
Yeah, and that's sort of something that we're not seeing over here. So it's really good to get that insight. And somewhere else where it's obviously very different. And I know there's lots of issues with the government in Brazil, Olga. But how have you found it? So I know you only landed back last weekend, but what's going on there at the moment?
So here we are a few weeks behind Europe in terms of the spread of the virus. But the governments kind of learned, the government, not the federal government, but the governors in the states kind of learned from Europe. So they started the quarantine earlier. So the recommendation is stay at home as much as you can. But I think it's different from Italy and Spain, because I've heard that in some countries you have the police not letting people out of their houses, and that's not the case here. You can still go out. I don't know for how long this is going to happen, but for now you can go out. You have to be conscious, you have to be careful, but you can. Yesterday, the official number was 77 death people by the disease. So you're expecting the worst is coming in the next 2 weeks. But I don't know if you've heard, but while the governors are being very responsible and very careful with coronavirus, our president, that is like the Brazilian Trump, is doing the opposite and telling people to go out, to go to work, because he thinks the economy can't stop. His slogan is Brazil can't stop. But thankfully, the governors and the ministers are being much more responsible than the president and saying that people should stay at home.
And what's been the response of the people?
There is a small group of people who are like very, very loyal to the president, but I think every week, every day, people are more aware of how stupid and irresponsible the president has been acting. So today, it's going to be the eighth day in a row that people go outside at 8 p.m. every night to protest against the president. So everybody's trying to ignore the president right now, but there are some specialists saying that probably he might be impeached after everything, after the crisis, because he is like committing crimes against the public health by telling people to go outside.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think this could be the end for him?
We hope so, right?
Yeah.
Because he's being like very, very responsible. And there is another thing, like, because he went to the US a few weeks ago, and in this trip, pretty much everybody who went in this trip with him got tested positive for coronavirus. And he says he hasn't been tested positive, but he haven't showed his exams. So there are some people that believe that he might got coronavirus, and he doesn't want to tell people about it. He says it's a little flu, that the economy should keep going. Because, of course, his allies are like the rich owners of companies, so he wants the economy going on. He doesn't care about people who might die. And maybe, hopefully, the only good thing about this coronavirus in Brazil will be that everybody will see how stupid the president is, and that may be the end for him.
Well, brilliant. Thank you for that. And Becky, also, I wanted to come to you to just get an idea of what it's like for you, obviously being in England and being away from your family. What are you hearing from back home in Canada?
So I think the biggest thing for me is that it's kind of a highly confusing time to be separated from my family and getting different advice from different governments as well. Being over here, we get almost daily, bi-daily, or every other day emails from the Canadian government giving suggestions too. And for a long time over here, Boris was saying many different things. So Canada socially isolated and socially distanced about a week or two before we did, and they only had a couple hundred cases. So they've managed to slow it down quite a bit already. And what I'm hearing from my family is that people are generally respecting it, minus trying to go outside in bigger groups still sometimes. But people are only going to the store. One person from the family is only allowed to go. And people are respecting it in terms of not going over to each other's houses and not going out unless they really have to. So generally it seems pretty good. Obviously it's really terrifying. We've got 4,000 cases, but only 39 deaths. So they're working pretty hard to contain it over there.
Yeah. Yeah. And for you being here, how would you compare sort of how we've dealt with it and how Boris Johnson and his team are doing?
I think it's better now. I think they were really slow to react to what was happening, kind of the same with how Ireland was ahead of the UK as well. They were really slow to react, and I was seeing what Canada was doing, and it was frustrating me. But I think now that hopefully we're doing the right thing. People have been told to socially isolate. We're on more of a lockdown. Police are clearing out parks. And if we can all respect it and do it the right way, that we will be able to slow it down, hopefully in a few months.
I think it's really important that we learn from what's happened in Italy, and considering that you, Flavia, were the first country to shut off flights to China. You shut down, but obviously the North didn't quite shut down quick enough. But the spread in Italy has just been been remarkable. And I think it's really important that we as a population learn from that and do just stay inside. So if you are listening at home, make sure you stay at home, you follow the government's precautions, whether you're in Spain, whether you're in Brazil, whether you're in Italy, whether you're in Ireland, Canada, or here in Britain, or all over the world. But I think it's just really important that we put that message out as a team. But thank you all for that. It's really enlightening, and I'm sure our listeners will find it really interesting just listening to personal views of this, because I think we're all living in completely different situations, and it's just great to get your input. And I hope that we can return back to England and back to St Mary's at some stage, but we shall see. Moving on, we will get into sport. And while I'm with you, Becky, I wanted to start because obviously lots of things are being cancelled. Well, not necessarily cancelled, but postponed. We had the Olympics pushed back a year, Premier League, all of these European football tournaments, UEFA putting them back, but not many cancellations, flat out cancellations. Now, one thing is obviously a bit personal to you. Becky was obviously selected to represent Great Britain at the Ultimate Frisbee World Championships this summer in Holland. Am I right?
Yeah.
And they released a statement, the WFDF, is that the board, saying that we regret to say this extraordinary decision, but the health and safety of our athletes, team support, volunteers, staff and spectators is our paramount concern. And that came from the president, Robert Rauch. And he said, we know that the decision will disappoint many athletes who've been extensively training for these competitions, but it's difficult to imagine moving forward given the current environment of border shutdowns, individual lockdowns and other exceptional government actions. Now, what this is, at first I think it was unclear to some of you guys whether this was a cancellation or a postponement, but it is a straight up cancellation. I know this is something you're quite passionate about as one of these athletes and obviously as a journalist. So if you could just sort of give us a bit more detail about this.
Yeah, it's complicated because they say they're canceling it because we have such a packed tournament schedule next summer. There's the Under-24 Championships, the World Beach Championships, and the World Games, which is obviously accommodates lots of different sports that are all aspiring to become Olympic sports. So they don't feel like they can fit it into a schedule. That being said, they have said that they are trying to look at other options of rescheduling, but it's extremely unlikely at this point. And it's the right decision, but it doesn't make it any less heartbreaking to not get the opportunity to play. It only comes around every 4 years. And personally, my plan was to semi-retire after to focus more on a career because it's a self-funded sport and I can't afford to keep doing it forever. So this was my kind of moment, and it's gone. But yeah, so it's devastating if it doesn't get rescheduled, but it's also understandable at the same time.
And I just wanted to open this up to the whole group. But what do you guys think is the way to go about this? Obviously, we're seeing tennis tournaments like the French Open just saying, right, we're going to have it in September, and just completely taking out of consideration other events. And that is the best way to do wait and see, or is the best way to go about it plan to put it in the future rather than cancelling? Because like Becky's saying, by cancelling these events, you are changing people's lives, and we know what sport can do and how important sport is to people, and we know that better than anyone. Do we think that the best way to go about this is just wait and see?
I think so. Like right now, you have to focus on what's actually important, and that's trying to flatten the curve and like save lives and make sure that the virus is slowed down. So you can't be worrying about sport, even though it's very important to us, obviously, and it's important to people all around the world. It's not a matter of life and death like this virus is. So they have to at least postpone them. We can worry about fulfilling the fixtures later, but right now we just have to worry about the health crisis.
Yeah, I think for me this just seemed premature when you told us all about it the other day. It's scheduled for July, I believe. There must be scope. Who knows what the situation is going to be then? You're not necessarily going to need to play in front of people, so it just seems a bit snap. I know people have been getting on the Olympics and stuff for not being snap enough, but why not postpone?
I mean, at the same time, there's, athletes, over 3,000 athletes from 50 plus countries traveling to the World Ultimate Championships as well. So that amount of travel in July is it's not realistic. So we were expecting it to be postponed before the announcement came. And as soon as the Olympics were postponed, our announcement came almost right away as well. And like Muireann said, it's 100% the right thing. It is protecting public health is the right thing right now. But I do wish there was at least a feeling of a conversation that felt like it was more open-minded to rescheduling it a year from now. We're kind of prioritizing the World Games over the World Championships, which may not make sense to a lot of people in terms of we have 8 countries who qualify for the World Games. We're trying to set ourselves up as a potential future Olympic sport. So we're prioritizing trying to figure out a way to make 8 countries very happy about the World Games, where 50 plus countries are losing out on their chance to compete in the World Championships. And this year there was teams from Panama who are coming for the first ever time, Venezuela, India, who won't get to compete at all, and in 4 years could maybe not afford to compete either. So I wish it'd be rescheduled for next year, but I don't think that's going to happen, and I will slowly start to accept it.
Perfect. Well, thanks for that. And moving on, we'll jump to you, Muireann, because obviously you're in a very with the GAA and the nature of the GAA in Ireland, it's a very interesting situation that you find yourselves in, because they don't quite have the financial pressures that you'd see all of these other big organisations that are obviously trying to hold off on decisions. But the GAA have been a bit indecisive, and I know you've got a lot to say about that.
They have, so obviously they're not under the constraints of soccer or rugby here, that they have to play their players. The GAA is completely amateur, so even at the highest level, the players aren't paid. So there's no talk of wage cuts or anything like that. So it's kind of nearly a silver lining. It's one less thing they have to deal with. But on all other issues, they don't know what to do. And you can, to a certain extent, you can understand that, because nobody has dealt with this before. Nobody has any idea how long we'll be dealing with this. So with the structure of the GAA, you have county competitions. So you have Dublin, Clare, Cork, that kind of level. Then you also have the club scene, which is clubs all around the country competing at that level. So these run at different times of the year. So it has a massive knock-on effect. So if you're not having a knock-on effect at a county level, it'll knock on to the clubs. So this is affecting just countless players around the country, and they don't know what to do. So at the moment, they have cancelled all the existing national league. So that's the county level and club level as well. The league has also been cancelled. But now they're talking about pushing back, or attempting to push back, the county championship, which is due to take over over the summer months. And that's not realistic either. So they're saying if they get that underway by mid-June, they should still meet the original All-Ireland dates for the end of August. But that's not realistic. Really, if we're back playing by mid-June, it would be some form of miracle, I think, at this stage. And
what would you say the ideal situation would be for them, and how they should have handled it?
Well, I just think postponing them, it has too much of a knock-on effect. So I think nearly cancelling them might be the best way about it. Where they're caught with the National League, considering it had already started, it had only 2 weeks of group stages left. They're caught with that competition because there is a relegation and a promotion aspect to it. So that is now up in the air. They don't know if they will be able to promote teams or relegate them. Would it be fair if they don't finish out the league? With the championship, that isn't a factor, but the championship is always considered more important.
Could you see them maybe prioritising the county competition?
I'd say they would. I'd say they will let the county championship go ahead at the expense of the club if it came to it. The county scene is a much bigger money spinner, so if you're to be cynical about it. But really, they just don't know. And we don't know, and I don't think they know themselves yet.
Yeah. Well, perfect. And the confusion there is what we're seeing all over the world in all sorts of sports. I want to jump to Flavia, actually, because Serie A have come under quite a lot of criticism for their initial reaction to the virus, particularly with the rate it was rapidly spreading in Italy. So I just sort of wanted to get your thoughts on how they've handled it, Flavia.
Oh, I personally think that like Serie A ended really bad. To fully understand, 48 hours later, like after the first few cases were confirmed in northern Italy, and with those two little towns already in lockdown, like Serie A held the games like with the people at the stadium like just 70 kilometers away. I think that was just like really risky situation, and like you should have not done that. They, I don't know, they really messed up with the fixtures a lot. They allowed some teams to play for a week. They did not allow others to play. Some played behind closed doors. They were not able to make a decision that would work for everyone. They were like, okay, let's postpone like the games that involve the teams from the north and then like need to be played there. But then like other teams could play. So now some teams have more games than others. If you would end the league now, you have to still go back to like a few weeks before the coronavirus starts spreading in Italy, because otherwise you will not have the same number of games played everyone. So it's a tricky situation there.
And on that point, I know there's one specific game, the Atlanta home Champions League game. They think that quite a lot of cases were contracted from that fixture.
Yeah, so to be fair, that game happened before the first confirmed cases, so you could not really foresee that.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of cases in Bergamo, which is the worst city right now to be. I have some relation to the game. They've been either to the game or they have been in contact with someone that was at the game. And also it kind of like was the reason why it spread so quickly in Spain as well, because it was Atalanta Valencia. Therefore, like a lot of Valencia supporters that were there got the virus and like brought it back to Spain. I really think that like football should have stopped immediately. Yeah. European competitions as well, but like Serie A kept, like 2 weeks after that, they still played Inter Juventus, and like a Juventus player was positive to the virus, and they didn't care.
And
so that was really
you've got to think that these leagues need to come under scrutiny as well, because I know over here, like the Premier League and the Football League, I know they took their time, but they didn't wait for Boris Johnson to cancel all mass gatherings. They went for it themselves. I know they were pushed by players actually contracting cases, but maybe we should have seen some of these organisations and some of these governing bodies taking a bigger step in. And you mentioned Valencia there, and that sort of perfectly leads us into Maitane. I know I've seen over one of the stories I've seen picked up on is Barcelona. They're in a bit of a dispute with the players and the board over this 70% wage cut. I wanted to get your thoughts on that, and then just generally if you can give us a similar idea to how you think the sports governing bodies are handling it in Spain.
Yeah, well, first of all, the last match in La Liga was played without public, and then they decided, that was March the 12th, so that weekend they decided that they weren't going to play any more matches in all categories of football. And yes, what you said, not only in football clubs, most of the companies here in Spain are adopting like temporary reductions, and that's where Barcelona have said no. Today they've said on the news that even though the players don't agree with this measure, the club is going to go on with that. And Espanyol is also taking the same measure. So that's, I'm not sure if it's 70% or 50%, and they're not agreeing with that either, which I think is so selfish.
Yeah, how I was going to say, how has that gone down?
I just think it's, they can't see the importance of the coronavirus epidemic, and they just think about their salaries, which I think that with the money they've got, they won't suffer the not playing and not training and not having the complete salary they usually have. So yeah, I just think it's horrible.
And has there been any situations of this in Italy, Flavia, with wages and players taking?
I think they are still working on it, but the situation is really messed up because at the same time, Serie A does not really want to give up on money. Like, an example is like TV rights. Sky Italia has to pay the third like payment for the annual TV rights, and the Serie A was like, oh, you have to pay quick because otherwise we don't have enough money. We're talking about multi-millionaire companies, not like local shops. And Sky is also saying, it's like, why do I need to pay TV rights? I'm not offering a service. I don't have any live sport to show. Like, why do I have to pay TV rights? I'm like, those are like big companies that they can totally afford some like restrictions on it right now. Like, obviously you still have a lot of employees that you need to pay, but at the same time, some players have so much money that if you reduce the salary for them, should not be an issue, considering that some people really cannot go to work and have troubles to like survive in this time because they're not making any money. So
yeah. And Olga, obviously, I'll come to you because obviously you've mentioned how the situation is very different. You are quite behind us, but you're trying to learn from Europe. And are you seeing that translate on the sporting side of things? What's going on in South America?
Yeah, about the salary of the players. Yesterday, the 20 clubs in the first division had a meeting, and they decided they are going to postpone to April the 20th the decision to reduce the salary of the players. So until there, it's going to be like a general vacation because they want to wait and see how things are going to happen before they take this decision. But the football and sports in general here is stopped at the same time as the Premier League stopped. So I remember the Premier League decided not stopping because of the government. The government didn't say anything at the time, but then Arsenal's coach got tested positive, so they decided to stop.
Yeah.
Here in Brazil, I think it was on Friday, they decided to stop. That would be the last weekend.
Yeah.
And in this last weekend, that it was like 2 weeks ago, the players made protests. They went to the field with masks to protest because they wanted it to stop. So they stopped it. And some managers in clubs, in very important clubs here in Brazil, got tested positive as well. So I think everybody's cool with that. They think this is the best decision to stop everything. And one very, very nice thing that is happening here in Brazil is some stadiums like Pacaembu, that's the most traditional stadium in Sao Paulo, and Maracanã, worldwide known Maracanã. They are building, the local government are building provisory hospitals in these stadiums to receive people who got coronavirus. So it's very, very nice what's going on about it. And some clubs, to keep their athletes training, they are sending gym equipments for the players' houses, so they will be able to keep like training, or at least like at the gym during the coronavirus stop.
Yeah, I think that's something we're seeing sort of globally, a real effort for people to train at home, and that's sort of away from the sports stars is something that you've seen all these videos. Joe Wicks over here is a former St Mary's graduate who has put together every morning. He's doing a live stream for Fitness for Kids and for adults, which is a great program, and I think really, really important in helping people come together. I just wanted to go to probably the biggest talking point of the week, and the first time ever it's happened. And we're not going to have Tokyo 2020. We are going to have Tokyo 2021, as the IOC President Thomas Bach announced the other day. And guys, I just wanted to get your opinion, because obviously the IOC have come under a lot of scrutiny for how they responded quite slowly. And I'm going to come to you, Becky, first, because Canada are obviously one of the nations that sort of started putting pressure on to the IOC about postponing the games. And what are your views on that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was actually a moment where I felt extremely patriotic and proud to be Canadian, because the day before the IOC ended up officially postponing, Canada announced, our Olympic Committee announced that we would not be sending any of our athletes to the Olympic Games unless it was postponed. And they made that decision on behalf of all the athletes who had also been lobbying both the COC and the IOC for that decision to be made. But I thought it was a great move. It put pressure on them, and it kind of, I think, showed a lot of other people in the world and the IOC that countries were willing to do that and willing to take a stand on their own. And I really felt like they led the way doing that. So, I mean, sad to not have the Olympics, but it's 100% the right thing. We need to protect safety and health. And yeah, proud to be Canadian, proud that we led the way on that one.
Perfect. And guys, what's the thinking been from your nation's perspective about how the Olympic question was dealt with, and maybe some of the athletes that have been affected by this? Could you give us insights into any of those stories?
Yeah, for example, in Italy, well, the Olympic Committee was 100% on board with that decision. They obviously, right now, the priority has to be the health of people. Like, people are dying, people are suffering. Sport comes second. It's not life or death situation. So it was the right thing for the IOC to postpone the Olympics. Many athletes, the majority of the Italian athletes, I'm gonna say, they agreed with the decision. It was heartbreaking for some of them. There were a few, there are a few women that, they're already in the mid-30s, and they want to have families, and obviously one more year of training and postponing that could make a difference, but at the same time, they know it's the right thing to do right now. So it was positive. A lot of them also are taking that as, well, we have one more year to improve, and maybe we would be even better next year in training, trying to get the positive side of it.
And I'll come to you, Muireann. What did you think of Tokyo's response to this, and Japan's PM and everything, and insisting that it would go ahead for so long, and it may be in a bit of a naive way, because obviously they've dealt with the virus very well in Japan, touch wood. So what did you think of that?
I think it just highlighted that the IOC, they're not the amazing governing body they need to be, considering that the Olympics is a worldwide event. They were just so weak in it. They held out for so long, and they needed to kind of lead with an iron fist, basically, and they didn't. So that was kind of disappointing, but it was great to see, like Becky said, that individual nations were taking on that responsibility and saying, no, if you're not going to protect our athletes, we will. So I think it was well received here. I think the athletes were expecting it. They could see how bad things were in China, how bad they were getting in Italy, that they're currently getting worse here. So it was expected for them, and I think a lot of them are very grateful that it hasn't been cancelled. They will get the opportunity to go. If they've qualified, they will get their Olympic dream. Yeah. And if they haven't qualified yet, they will get the opportunity to do so, just at a later date. So I think the Irish athletes have really taken it well.
Yeah. And I'll jump to Maitane, because I know you've particularly spoken to quite a few athletes throughout this year who had Tokyo dreams, and obviously they've those dreams, well, they're changing in every day. They're changing, and the IOC needed to step in and make this decision, so at least people know what's happening and know what to prepare for, because so much work goes into planning an Olympic schedule. How do you think this affects the day-to-day life of an athlete?
Well, what you said, we didn't know for quite a few weeks what was going to happen, if it was going to be delayed or cancelled completely. So I think that has given the athletes that extra time of thinking, getting their minds into what would happen, what is going to happen. And the athletes I've been talking over this year are young, so I think that extra year is going to give them that extra experience in order to perform even better at the Olympics. So yeah, even though the world schedule is going to be changed in lots of ways, because lots of sports are going to be touched like that, postponing the Olympics. I think they're going to have to manage with it, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, this is just going to be a testing time for everyone. And for you, Olga, obviously, Brazil remains the last host city for another year. So that's an interesting dynamic. Now, and in terms of Olympic cycle, I wanted to come to you on this. Just finally on this, and anyone else feel free to chip in. But what do we think happens on the next Olympic cycle? Obviously, that will only be 3 years. So it's a knock-on effect this has. What do you think they're going to try and do with the scheduling?
I think they'll keep it Paris 24, right? 2024.
Yeah.
I think there is no reason to postpone that.
Yeah.
I think within the next years they will have to make some changes about the Euro, because the men's Euro is going to be next year. So I don't know if there is any update about it, but so far that I knew, there is no news about the women's Euro that was supposed to be next year.
I've
so
heard
they'll have
suggesting that might be. I've heard people suggesting that might be in 2022.
I'm pretty sure that UEFA has announced that the women's will be the following year.
So I think that we will have this lots of championships to happen within the next year with this postponing. So I don't see a reason why it shouldn't be Paris 2024.
Yeah, and with that, I think it will. The world will be desperate to get back to kind of some sort of normality. So keeping things in place like 2024 and those dates in place will get us back to feeling like we're on a normal schedule, even if it's in a few years' time.
And I don't know about you guys on the topic of Euro 2021 for the women. I don't see a reason why we can't have 2 championships in a summer. No reason whatsoever, and I think that would actually be brilliant.
I don't know, I disagree actually, because I don't think people could stand like 60 days of football watching like for 2 months. So I think it could harm the women's championship. So I would rather it should be 2022. So we have all the shiny for the women for the summer.
Well, you never know. I think after this, people will take all the football they can get.
Yeah, maybe. Can I just say something about, because I was talking about Bolsonaro and how crazy this guy is. He said recently that coronavirus couldn't affect him because he has an athlete background, because he used to be an athlete at the army. So he wouldn't get affected by the coronavirus. And we had this swimmer from South Africa. I don't recall his name now, but he was Flavia, you help me here. You are the
Cameron Vanderburg. He actually lives in London with his wife.
And he was saying that it was like one of the worst things that ever happened to him, that he was feeling very, very ill. And this guy, he has a strong athlete background, maybe better than Bolsonaro. So this is kind of a joke, because it's better laughing than cry with Bolsonaro. But yeah, he said that. That's insane. I just wanted to say it.
That is brilliant. Right, to finish, I thought what we could do is we put a bit of cheer into everyone. Obviously, there's lots of negativity going around. We've scrutinised all sorts of governing bodies, all sorts of athletes, particularly in Spain, as we've seen with the wages. I thought what we'd do is I'd like to get a feel-good story of an athlete, and because sportsmen aren't all bad, they're not all selfish, money, greedy people. So I thought we'd get a positive story from each of you about what athletes are doing. I know Olga's mentioned what the American are and what they're doing, but I'll jump to Becky first on this one.
Yeah, so we've had a pretty good response by the Canadian athletes overall to the Olympics being postponed in particular. And one of our athletes, Evan Dumphy, he's a race walker who is slated to hopefully hit the podium in Tokyo. He almost immediately said, we are all still Canadian and it's bigger than sport, and being Canadian means so much more than just going to the Olympics and representing your country, and has now organized and motivated a whole bunch of people and athletes to go out and donate blood. So there's a ton of Olympic athletes in Canada who are going out, donating blood. There's some funny jokes about it being, Olympic blood, so it's even better. But they're doing something to support people who are in need, and I just thought that it was incredible that he really pulled people together to go out and do something positive in this time.
I think that's brilliant, because I also know over here the NHS are appealing for blood donors, because I think people are just scared to go and do it, but they have got safety measures in place because of all of this. So, and they need it more now than ever. So if you are listening, I encourage you to fully go out, and you can, whatever country you're in, and that can save lives. So Muireann, we'll jump to you.
There's been a really good response from like all over the sporting community in Ireland. So a lot of our high profile athletes, from Katie Taylor to Conor McGregor, if he is what you're into, and also all of our GAA athletes have really gotten behind it and promoted this, that we should be following government guidelines. So that was really great to see. But there's a really, really lovely story, and it was all over the news for the past few days. A little boy called Nathan, from Selbridge in County Kildare. He's only 11 years old, but his mother videoed him in the back garden kicking the ball against the wall and reflecting back, and he was doing his kind of goalkeeping practice with it. He posted online, and it got over 7 million views, and he got some responses. So Peter Schmeichel, David De Gea, they all replied to him. They were retweeting it, and Joan Mata actually offered to do a training session with him when all this is over. So like, it does show that there's really good eggs out there as well, and people will support each other when it's tough.
Yeah, and that's brilliant. Maitane, anything going on in Spain?
Well, football clubs are giving money to hospitals. In Madrid, they've set like a hospital in an event building, and Silvia Meseguer from Atletico Madrid, she's second or third year of medicine, and she said she can go and help, so that's really nice. And not football related, but every day at 8 o'clock we go to our balconies and clap for the people in the hospital, helping everyone.
And that's something we've seen start over here now. It's come from Europe. I think Holland may have been the first country to start, maybe Italy, but and it's great. Yeah, I think that we're also thankful for the services that health workers across the world are giving at this time. Flavia, feel good story.
The most exciting part of our day.
Some Serie A players have started like donations and like funding campaigns for paying for like new things in hospitals, like new bed machines, face masks, anything. But I think the initiative I like most is some rugby clubs have like the players start volunteering with the Red Cross and the Yellow Cross, and they are like driving to like deliver grocery to like old people or like to whoever is like in isolation, so cannot go out. Pharmacy, like just basically do the things outside for like people who cannot leave, maybe elderly people who are scared to go out right now. So trying to like give like concrete help to like people, like actually support them with logistic things right now.
Brilliant. And if I know you mentioned, but with the Magna Carta, have you got any other stories that have come out that have made you feel really good?
What I've seen a lot is videos of players from all sports and all clubs on the internet trying to aware people to stay at home.
Yeah.
And if you consider what's going on with the president, I think it's very positive, because they have the power to influence a lot of people.
And that is the message. That is the real message of the day, really, isn't it? Wherever you are in the world, we can get through this together, and if we do stay at home, we'll have our sport back, and we'll have hopefully some kind of normality back, which is what we hope.
Yeah, exactly.
So brilliant, guys. Thank you very much for joining me today, and thank you guys for listening. If you are going to listen, head over to Twitter and give Sports Gazette a follow. It's at Sports Gazette with a capital S and a capital G. There's plenty of content being pumped out there over this weekend and over the coming weeks, coronavirus related, lots of athlete interviews. So there'll be plenty of stuff there for you guys to get your teeth into. For me, thank you very much to Alex Bartlett, and I'm going to sign off for Flavia Festa, Maitane Alana, Muireann Duffy.
Bye-bye.
Olga Bagatini and Becky Thompson.
Bye.